and it's Stan the Fan from PressBox and PressBoxOnline.com with PressBox Live. And with us tonight on this Monday night edition is Ross Grimsley, the old left-hander, and the old right-hander, Luke, the young right-hander, I should call him.
Youngster, yeah.
Luke Jackson. We're going to talk a little O's. We're going to talk a little bit about some health situation involving an ex-Oriole, Rich Dauer, and what people can do to help him. And let's get started. Let me tell you, first of all, the Constant Sin always brings us all of our Zooms, but AJ Michaels is one of our sponsors as well. Expert and award-winning AJ Michaels Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Home Performance will improve your home's energy efficiency and comfort levels. The AC season is coming up fast. New rebates and discounts are available. More at ajmichaels.com. Let me just add, this week we've gotten a little bit of a respite. It's going to be cooled off some this week, but don't get snookered by that. It's going to suddenly get real hot in Baltimore. And somebody that can attest to the heat in Baltimore summers is Ross Grimsley. Ross, the Orioles, speaking of heat, Orioles are hot. They're 14-7. And aside from the Toronto Blue Jays, I think in the American League, they're playing better than anybody else right now.
They're on fire, Stan. 14 of the first 21, 10 of the last 12. And, they're 12-3 against everybody else except teams in the AL East. But they're on fire. They just seem to – I was listening to the game on the computer yesterday, and it was 1-0, I think, going into the 8th inning or 7th inning. And they tied it up, and I go, well, it's just a matter of time. They're going to win, so I just turned it off, and they won, obviously. But, you just expect them to win now, and hopefully this can carry over. Starting May the 5th, they're going to start playing some tougher teams. So hopefully they can take advantage of the schedule right now and prepare them for these teams coming up, and we'll see what happens after that.
All right, Luke, I mentioned it in my MLB power rankings. And by the way, I had a little procedure done today. So we knocked that off and we combined our efforts in the 6 o'clock Zoom. And we'll talk a little bit about that now. I mentioned it, Luke, that Jim Bowden, listening to him on XM yesterday, made a really interesting point. Now, I know the other teams are going to probably play some tougher teams too, but the Tampa Bay Rays faced an infinitely greater schedule coming up the next 35 days, so to speak, till May 28th. They've got games against the Yankees, the Orioles, the Dodgers, the Mets. Going to be a little different than playing the Nats, Detroit, and Oakland 9 straight games.
Yeah, there's no question about it. However, 19-3 is a pretty damn good start no matter who. And, at this point, the Rays just have to play 500 ball the rest of the way, and they'll end up being an 89-90 win team or thereabouts, and that most likely gets you into the playoffs, considering they made the playoffs with 86 last year. And the Orioles are in the middle of a softer part of their schedule right now, but one thing that they've got to do better this year than they did last is take advantage of those spots in the schedule. Last year they went 4-9 against the Tigers and the A's, who were the 2 worst teams in the American League. If you flip that record around, they go 9-4 instead of 4-9. Maybe it's a little different schedule. A little different story coming down the stretch in terms of playoffs. They end up falling 3 games short of the Rays last year. So,
they've taken care of business for the most part. They beat Oakland 3 out of 4. Mm-hmm. They beat Detroit 3-0, and they beat the Nats 2-0.
And that's exactly what they have to do.
Yeah.
Because I know that they don't play the AL East opponents quite as much this year as they did last year. They're still going to play those teams quite a bit. And I would imagine that those AL East teams are going to beat each other up. And so you've got to take advantage of a softer schedule outside of the division. And coming up, they have Boston at home. That's going to be a tough series, but they go to Detroit for a 4-game series. And then they have a series at Kansas City. And so that's a road trip you have to take advantage of. After that Kansas City series, it gets a lot tougher. I think they go to Atlanta after that.
Yeah.
And so it gets a lot tougher after that. So this is a sneaky big portion of the schedule for the Orioles this season. No question about it.
Yeah. They're a team, with where they are in terms of gaining the experience enough to win. This is like you said, a sneaky important series of games, the next 10 or 12 games before they get to the heart. It would really be nice if they could go 8-4 or 9-3 in these next 12 games.
You understand that, guys, that they're learning how to win, as we've seen with some of the close games, the one-run games, and games in the later innings, extra innings they've won, and it's like yesterday. But they're figuring they got to beat they beat these supposedly the less strong team, I guess you might say. They beat up on those guys. The O's haven't. They haven't had a winning record against the AL East teams since 2016. So that this is something that if they get the more they win, the more confidence you get, and they come into play in, like you said, Atlanta for 3 games, Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh, who is I don't know where they come from.
Pittsburgh's no longer a pushover.
No. And then you got the Angels with that group, and Toronto, New York, and Texas comes in. They play them at home, so that'll be interesting to see how they kind of springboard off this schedule into those guys. So hopefully, and the way they're pitching, that has been fantastic. They don't walk a lot of guys. I think they're 5th in the major league in fewest walks. Throwing strikes, they are the number 1 team in first pitch strikes in all of baseball, and that's so important. You throw a first pitch strike, after that, the hitters usually hit around 200 or so. So they do that as good as anybody in baseball. But the pitching has been really a big thing. Hopefully the starters can get them deep in the game. They're averaging 5 1/3 innings a start.
Not good enough.
You saw what happened last year toward the last 2 months of the season. The bullpen got wore out, and the ERA elevated. So if they can get some guys that can give them, 6-7 innings at times, that's going to spell that bullpen. They're going to be stronger at the end, and that's going to be a big plus for them.
Can I touch on something that you just mentioned, Ross, about first pitch strikes?
Yeah.
Apparently that was a big emphasis last spring with Chris Holt and Brandon Hyde, that they were sick of their pitchers basically dancing around the strike zone, giving the hitters too much credit, not being aggressive enough. And as an organization, they said, okay, we're going to meet you halfway here. We're going to back up left field. We understand that it's a tough park to pitch in. And so how would with the new left field, and we saw it yesterday, Grayson Rodriguez gave up a fly ball that would have been a home run 2 years ago. So can you touch on why it's a lot easier for those guys at Camden Yards to pitch aggressively when it's a little more pitcher friendly?
Right. No, that was one of the things that Stan, you remember, and I bring this up, several years ago at Pappas, we were out there and I made a comment about, pitchers didn't want to come to Baltimore because, free agent guys, because it's a tough place to pitch. You throw a good pitch, they hit it off the end of the bat, or you jam them and it goes out of the park. So obviously you're going to be a little more, you're not going to be as aggressive and go after hitters 2-0, 3-1, and then you end up walking them. Now, instead of giving up 1 run, you give up 2 because the guy gets home run because you can't, you don't want to walk them. But if the park is fair, Fenway can be tough, Wrigley Field can be tough. There's several, and used to Camden was really tough because the ball flew out of there. So then you become a little more. You try to make too good of pitches, you end up falling behind. You don't want to walk them, then you throw a cookie down the middle, and they hit it out. But if it's fair and you make pitches, that's all you want. But that's something that these guys, especially last year, because I remember hearing that, and be more aggressive, throw more strikes, go after hitters. The park's going to play fair, so let them hit it. Don't try not to walk them and make those innings. Give up 1 run, but don't give up 2 or 3. Keep the crooked numbers off the board. But when you've got a field that's fair, you can be more aggressive, throw more strikes, and you'll go after hitters a lot more.
Luke, you've been editing my power rankings, I guess, since 2021.
2018.
2018, you've been doing it? Jesus,
how about it?
Time flies. Time flies when you're getting old. But all kidding aside, I've been pretty fair with the Orioles, where they really
Right.
belong. I have them in the top 10 this week. I have them coming in at number 9, just ahead of Minnesota, right behind San Diego
Mhm.
at number 8. Where do you guys both think the Orioles belong without giving me your entire power rankings? Do you think I'm kind of on the money, or would you have them a little bit outside the top 10?
Yeah, I think that your range is fair. I think between like 9 and 12 seems about right with how
Yep.
they played. Ross touched on a couple things that need to get better. The starters have gotten deeper in the past week. It's been against not great competition. So can the starters continue to get deep against better competition? We're going to have to find out. They have a few hitters that have not played great to this point. Ryan Mountcastle's batting average and on base not great at this point. Santander hasn't heated up. And they have one more guy that hasn't heated up whose name escapes me. But anyway, they've got a few offensive guys who have not played particularly well yet, that if they can get it rolling, they should be able to score runs. However, to this point, the bullpen has been pretty good, which is the same thing that happened last year. And every time that Brandon Hyde throws open that bullpen door, he's pretty confident that he's got guys with high-end major league stuff that are going to be aggressive, that are going to attack. That's a good feeling as a manager. And he's got a shortstop in Jorge Mateo playing at a very high level, and he's got a catcher playing in Adley Rutschman playing at a very high level, and a left fielder in Austin Hayes playing pretty well too. So you're hoping that, as those guys begin to cool off, some other guys start to heat up. So, but it's been a pretty balanced effort so far. But for me, the biggest thing, obviously, the starting pitching over the past week has gotten so much better. And I would like to ask Ross about this if I could. It used to be in spring training, starting pitchers really got all the way built up, like so they could go 7-8 innings, right? Now starting pitchers just get built up to like 5 innings in spring training. And then the first 2 weeks of the season is like extended spring training plus.
Right.
And these guys, another 2, 3, 4 starts to get totally built up. And the bullpens across the league get totally taxed in the first couple weeks of the season because none of the starters are really built up.
Right.
It's, to me, that over the past week, this is really the first time this year that the starters have really been ready to pitch. I don't know. Do you sort of see the same thing?
No, it's kind of always been that way, Luke. I know back in the 70s and 80s, we would get ready for the season, usually in league spring training, throwing 7 innings.
Mm-hmm.
And then we built up to throw more 9-inning games. I mean, you could throw 9 innings depending on your pitch count, and I should say, not so much the pitch count is how stressful was the number of pitches you threw in the game. You could throw 75 and be a higher stress level than 105. But you kind of build up. I know the first part of the season, the first couple of weeks, we were still trying to get our arms as strong as they possibly could get, at that point. But you're going to, they train the pitchers now to throw, like you said, 5 innings. Now, if you trained them to throw 7, then maybe you would get that. But everybody is so afraid that somebody's gonna get hurt. Well, they're hurt now all the time.
Right.
So obviously what you're doing maybe it's not working. You got to readjust what's going on here. But if you condition the guys, if you condition somebody to do certain things, it's gonna they'll be able to do that certain thing. So, but you can't be so worried, obviously, about a guy throwing too many pitches. Obviously, if you watch the game and know about the situation of the game, how stressful the pitches were, and sometimes give a guy 5-man rotation, maybe give a guy an extra day, depending on what happened that game before. There's ways to do it, but they're just so afraid that they're going to do something that's going to hurt a guy, and doing nothing seems to be the thing that hurts them the most.
Hey, Ross, I want your take on this. The Orioles gave up a pretty good prospect in Darrell Hernandez to the Oakland A's for Cole Irvin. I wrote last week that he was sent down, not so much like as a man, we really made a mistake. He stinks. It was a desperation move to fortify the pitching staff at that moment. But you bring up an interesting point when you talk about a 6-man rotation. Is that the way the Orioles will reintroduce Cole Irvin into the mix? Do you think that, because again, you want to keep Grayson Rodriguez innings down to about $125 tops at the end of the season, the regular season?
Well, I don't know if they're going to go with a 6-man rotation. I mean, you got some guys that are throwing the ball pretty well. You want to get them out there as often as you can, without taking a chance on injury. But Cole Irvin, he's a guy that averaged over 6 innings a start last year.
Yeah.
And here's a guy that you want in your rotation, to spell the bullpen and give them a break. And that's something that's very possible. And like I was saying, if a guy, you can use 6 pitchers, but it depends on how many innings this guy threw, how many pitches. Is there a day off in here? There's a way to juggle it and give a guy, a break maybe later on in the season during the hot weather, possibly. But like I said, you got some guys throwing the ball pretty well. You want to get those guys out there on their regular turn, because what happens a lot of times, you'll move them back 1 or 2 guys and it throws them off. And now they got to get back to that groove again, because pitchers are, creatures of habit. You get in a routine of doing stuff, and if it's working, you don't want to change it. And a lot of times, I don't think the people in charge understand that with pitchers. I mean, and hitters too. You get into a groove and you want to keep doing the same, eat the same food, do the same thing, and once they throw you off, it's just a mental thing that you go through, and now you're out of kilter somehow. Now you got to figure out how to get back into it. So it's a mind thing.
Hey, we're doing kind of like an Orioles pregame show tonight, so I'll give you the lineups and then talk about the Costas in before we continue. By the way, game times Monday through Thursday, April, May, and September. Start times are 6:35, right, Luke? 6:35?
Yep, you got it.
Threw me off Friday. I got out there thinking I was getting there like 5:30 for a 6:30 game and had that extra half hour to wait. Friday nights, Saturday nights, they're still 7:05 in the night games. Verdugo leads off in right field. Devers at third base. Justin Turner, the ex-Oriole, at designated hitter. Yoshida, the left fielder who hit 2 home runs yesterday for the against the Milwaukee Brewers. Enrique Hernandez at second base. Tristan Casas at first base. Jaron Duran in center field. Colton Wong at catcher, and Yu Chang at shortstop for the Boston Red Sox. Chris Sale on the hill for the Orioles. Austin Hayes in left, Rutschman at DH, Mountcastle at first, Santander in right, Urias at third, McCann at catcher, Mullins in center field, Jorge Mateo shortstop, and Adam Frazier at second base. Wanted to talk a little bit about the Costas in and remind you, I know all winter long you've been sort of waiting to get that. When the weather warms up, you get in the mood for crabs. I know Boog Powell and Ross Grimsley have eaten a few crabs in their days together. Yeah. And there's no time like this season when you're going to grab your first crabs of the season. They're very hard to get. The Costas Inn has them. They're plentiful for the Costas Inn. They've got great resources to get them. But you, as someone who wants to make plans to eat crabs, you got to think a day or 2 or 3 ahead and make your reservations. Call 477-1975. Make it like a little crab eating vacation when you go to the Costas Inn. They've got the best crabs around, but you do need to make a plan. 410-477-1975. The rest of their great menu is also there for you to look at CostasInn.com. We continue talking a little bit about the O's. Luke, tell me a little bit about the bullpen right now. They've got some interesting decisions to make coming down the pike. Probably another 10, 12 days down the road, and maybe it can be kicked even a pinch further for Dylan Tate, but Michael Givens is due to throw in the next day or two and go and rehab, and Dylan Tate's not far behind him. Who goes to the minor leagues to make room for the more veteran Dylan Tate and Michael Givens when you got Yanier Cano and Michael Baumann pitching so well?
Mhm.
The bullpen right now, other than Cionel Perez, doesn't look like it misses a beat. Keegan Aiken hasn't been off to a great start.
Pitched
but
well yesterday.
He's got a new baby, so I don't know how anxious they are to throw him to the minor leagues. But talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the guy who has taken a little, there are two guys who have taken dips in terms of performance from last year, and that's Austin Voth, who does not have an option, but they are paying him about $1.5 million, so they would have to eat that. The other guy is Cionel Perez, whose stuff to me is down maybe a tick, not a ton, but a tick. And Brandon Hyde has mentioned a couple times that batters are being uber aggressive off of Perez early in the count because they don't want to get to that slider late in the count. And so he has to make that adjustment. It happened again yesterday where first batter he faces is firing, and it's a line drive to center field. It's caught, but it's a hard hit ball. The next inning, like two guys get on like in 3 pitches. And so hitters are being really aggressive against him. So he's got to figure that out, why that's happening. And maybe it's just a matter of better fastball command early in the count. I don't know. So he and Chris Holt have to figure that out. Mike Baumann made the transition from the starting rotation to relief this year, looks really good. And I think anybody who had seen Baumann pitch in the minor leagues and in the majors even suspected that the relief is probably the direction that he was going to go. He does have an option. He can be sent down. Keegan Aiken, you mentioned, pitched well yesterday. Brandon Hyde walks a couple guys, ends up walking the bases loaded. Keegan Aiken makes him look really smart, gets out of it. Orioles win in the bottom half of the inning. But he does have an option. And for the most part, teams tend to go with the path of least resistance, which is always the guys.
Which is the option.
The guys who have options. Now, having said that, the moves that have to be made for Givens and Tate are still down the road. So a lot of stuff
can happen
in the next 2 weeks. So I don't know how far down the road we want to get on discussing these decisions. However, these are good problems to have. When you have a lot of back in 2021, they did not have the problem of figuring out, we have too many relievers who are pitching well. What do we do with them? This is a much better problem to have than they had in 20.
Much better.
And so, and whoever gets sent down, it's not like they're going to be down like for a long time. Like guys get hurt and guys bounce back and forth. It's not it's a see you later type of deal. And so I don't, in terms of what's going to happen, I don't know. I believe Dylan Tate is going to throw for Aberdeen and Wilmington tomorrow. And then Michael Givens is supposed to throw on a rehab assignment somewhere later in the week. We're not sure yet. So I guess the first things first, they've got to get through their rehab assignments. And they've got to, recover well from a back-to-back, that sort of thing. And then I guess we could discuss how the Orioles are going to make room for them. But yeah, this is a good problem to have if you're Michael Elias and Brandon Hyde.
Ross,
they have a lot of guys at the AAA level, even the AA level, that are pitching well. The Norfolk guys are throwing the ball very well there, and you've got a choice to bring people up and down. And in this day and age, you got to have 20 plus pitchers, that you can move back and forth.
Yeah. Ross, you've watched Mike Elias operate now for 4.5 years. This guy they picked up in the Jorge Lopez trade, he looked like he was sort of a throw-in in the deal, Yenier Cano. He had pitched a few innings and had a 9 ERA in the major leagues. He didn't look good for the Orioles, but now when you see him really in shape and in the good part of the season where he's in shape and ready to go, this was no simple throw-in by Mike Elias. He always seems to get a little something extra because we know that Cade Povich was the central guy they wanted in that deal. But Mike Elias has a long memory and knows a lot of these people he picks up.
Well, they obviously have, and what a lot of these teams are doing, they're starting to upgrade their scouting departments and get more scouts.
Yep.
You know, the Yankees always had a lot of guys. Houston started, they added scouts to their. So I wouldn't be surprised the Orioles are getting some input from different people, you know, in their organization and stuff that, hey, we can get this guy. And what they're doing, what the organization, you know, you got to tip your hat to them. Especially pitching wise, they're getting some people and getting getting what they want out of them and getting them to do it. So that's a big plus to them. And you got to really, like I said, tip your hat to them for doing that.
Luke, nobody's going to see the Aberdeen Ironbirds more than you during the course of a regular season. You got some exciting news because you live out that way. Not that you're a maniac for Ironbird baseball. And by the way, Ross, next Monday, we've got Jack Graham on, the general manager of the Aberdeen Ironbirds.
Right.
Because big news today, Jackson Holiday has already been elevated from Delmarva up to Aberdeen. Luke, how long do you think he'll be an Ironbird?
Honestly, I think he's got a chance to spend the bulk of his season in Aberdeen. You got to remember that Aberdeen is not a place where prospects typically hit well. It's regarded as a bit of a hitter's graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
And the gaps are huge, and the ball just doesn't travel particularly well at Aberdeen for whatever reason. And so, you know, Colt Kauser struggled a little bit there. Gunnar Henderson struggled a little bit there. Connor Norby struggled some there. And so everyone, you know, goes through there, and that's a bit of a roadblock. And that's the first time really that Jackson will face a lot of college age pitchers. And so he's going to be facing some experienced arms that he hasn't faced to this point in complex lead and low A. So it's going to be a challenge for him. And I think the Orioles thought that he was ready for it. And I'm really excited to get eyes on him. I've heard from multiple people how good he looked in spring training, how good he looked at Delmarva, that this is a super polished 19-year-old, that this is a kid who can move really quickly through the minor league system, that he could be in the majors by some point next year. I don't know. I'll wait until I see him to make my conclusions, but I'm really excited to see him.
Yeah, I am too. Ross, before we go tonight, game time in about 8 or 9 minutes. It's on Masson Channel 4 if you're in Baltimore County with Comcast. But Ross, I wanted to talk a little bit about Rich Dauer, who has had some health issues starting back right before the parade when the Astros won the World Series. He had been a coach on A.J. Hinch's staff. He fell, hit his head, and some emergency surgery saved his life the day of the parade. But could you talk a little bit about what's going on with Ross now? I know the family is not public about this, but I know that this situation is taking a couple turns.
Yeah, this happened back, like you said, in 2017 when Houston won. Richie was a coach over there, and they were having the parade. They were introducing, and he had hit his head the evening before. No pain, no problems, and he's gets introduced. And I think A.J. Hinch noticed, and I know Alonzo Powell was there, another coach, and noticed that he was a little woozy and wasn't quite right. Now there's 1 million people there. I mean, estimated 1 million people at this parade and thing. And they had to get him to the hospital, and thank goodness there was a hospital right there, and they got him to it. Long story short, he goes in, he had bleeding, brain hemorrhage. They had to operate on him. It was a 3-hour surgery, and he had a 3% chance of surviving, and he beat the odds and he survived, that's Richie. That's him. He loves life, and he's a fighter, and he loves to, a lot of energy. And so I think the next couple of years we saw him at the fantasy camp. He was just thrilled to be alive, obviously, and it was great. We saw him, he hugged everybody. He was very emotional. Well, anyway, he hits his head again later on, a couple years, maybe a year ago, and hits his head again. He's in a coma for 2 months. And he came out of the coma All right. Well, he fell and hit his head once again. And the same spot.
Hmm.
And now he is he was in Jacksonville at a traumatic brain injury facility. They have just moved him. I talked to Dave Ford, who pitched for the Orioles.
Sure.
And he flew from Cleveland down to see Richie in Jacksonville. He was there 5 days. Richie was he's on a feeding tube. He's on a oxygen tube. And to see your friend, you know, you go in there and not expecting that. I talked to Dave yesterday, and it just wasn't expecting that. It was just nothing you expected. And 95% of the time, Richie's not really sedated, but he's usually sleeping. 5% of the time he's up. They're doing the therapy and stuff. He actually was able to count to 3, I think, at one point, which was really a sign good. So anyway, they transferred him to Cincinnati. One of the big problems they're having is getting the care, the therapy, because the people aren't qualified to do this. So they've moved him from Jacksonville to Cincinnati. Well, I talked to Rich Dauer, Richie's wife, and it's really been a strain, a stress, obviously, of what's going on. They have to put their home up for sale in Georgia. She's moving to Cincinnati. I talked to her today. Just exhausted. It's really just a toll on it. Medicare is running out, and they got a GoFundMe page on Facebook to hopefully offset some of the bills. And I really encourage people, if you could, go on that and look at it. And
do you know the specifics of how you can get to it? Is it on Facebook?
It's on Facebook, and I think you could just write in Richie Dauer, type in Richie Dauer, it'll come up.
All right.
And but
I'll tell you what, next week we'll have more details on this. And really present it in a way that the Oriole fans and baseball fans that know who Rich Dauer is.
Exactly. But it's really a tough time for them, and it's just this could happen to anybody, and and it's just disrupted their family tremendously, and it's just been a total. What they have to go through now, and what they're going to have to go through in the future, it's going to be a long, hard road for Richie and his family, and. If anybody can pull this out, he can do it. But they really need some help at this time and in the future too. This is going to be a tough time.
One quick other question, without getting deeply into specifics, does the MLBPA have a fund or anything that can help out players that become injured?
They have a thing called BAT, which is a baseball assistance.
Joe Garagiola was very involved.
Yes,
in that.
And I was talking today to some people about it, and they are they're involved in it. So yes, something is happening there.
All right, great.
Hopefully, and can help offset some of this, but they need some help, and they obviously they're not going to ask for it, but the YouTube thing or the GoFundMe page is a big thing for them that they need, but. It's really a tough time for them.
So I just searched Rich Dauer GoFundMe on Google, and it showed right up. So
okay, great.
That's probably the best avenue to go about this.
All right. We'll plug it more on Glenn Clark's show on Friday. I'll make a point of it, and next Monday we'll have more information on it, Ross. Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thank both of you guys for coming in. Luke Jackson and Ross Grimsley. I'm Stan the Fan. The O's are next on Masson coming up. It's Chris Sale versus the Orioles. Dean Kramer at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. I'm sure there's some seats left, but otherwise, enjoy your home tonight and watch the game. I'll be on Thursday night. Actually, I won't be on this Thursday. We've decided to not have a show because it's NFL draft night. All right. For Luke Jackson, Ross Grimsley, I'm Stan the Fan. Enjoy your night and enjoy Oriole baseball. Bye.